about gerrymandering, and I'm a big no on this. Gerrymandering is wrong. Gerrymandering is immoral. Just as an aside, and this has a Poway connection. In 2018, our cities in California were threatened by lawsuits to implement district elections. In the city of Poway prior to 2018 and in the Poway Unified School District, the elections were at large. There were in Poway City Council, there were 4 council members and a mayor, and they were all elected in a citywide election. The mayor, whoever ran for mayor got the most votes would win. And then of the people running for city council, the top 4 would be elected. But it really was never 4. They were kind of staggered into offsetted 4-year terms. But the top 1 or 2 vote getters would obviously get elected. And then for the Poway School District, it was the same sort of thing. Then they implemented these new rules. They implemented districts into the city council and the school board. I know this was done not just in Poway, but throughout the state. And who got to decide where to draw the lines? Well, of course, the politicians were the ones that got to decide. And I remember in Poway Unified, and I had run for Poway Unified School Board in 2014. So I was really a lot more connected to what was going on at that time in 2018. And at that time, they had, if I remember correctly, there 4 of the 5 school board members lived within a 1-mile radius. So put a pin in the map 1 mile out. So essentially a 2-mile diameter. 4 of the 5 school board members, because it was an at-large election, lived in that circle in a school district that was 10 miles wide and 10 miles high. So essentially 100 square miles of a school district, roughly. And 4 of the 5 council members lived in a circle with a 1-mile radius. So how do you think they drew the lines? Well, they took that 1-mile radius circle and they split it into 3, which essentially protected 3 of those city council members. And they positioned the one school board member. They took the one school board member who was Charlie Sellers, who was the one that was probably the most disruptive on the board, the one that the board majority liked the least. They drew up a district to put him in the same district with TJ Zane, who was the former executive director of the Republican Party, who had a huge political machine behind him that would largely eliminate Charlie Sellers and have that 3-vote majority, who at that time was O'Connor Radcliffe, who's still on the board, Darsh Patel, who's now a state assembly member, and Zane would maintain their 3 out of 5 majority rule of that school board. The bottom line is that gerrymandering happens in the local elections too. It's not just a congressional thing, not just the Republicans in Texas, not just Gavin Newsom and the Democrats trying to do Prop 50 in California. It happens at the local election. And in our hometown of Poway, the politicians also drew the lines for the 4 city council districts. And there's a lot of debate on how those lines were drawn, and were they drawn for political purposes to protect certain council members? Well, I think the answer is obviously yes. So I'm a big fan of going back to independently drawn districts. So we've covered 2 topics that involve your ballot. Prop 50, which is going to be available to all people in California. And then if you happen to live in District 2 in Poway, there's going to be the recall election for Tony Blaine.